hosting companies have really covered like the network level, and then you need something on the server layer. But when we look into like how WordPress websites are getting hacked, in reality, it's always application level issues.
Okay, so you're telling that being proactive can convert these customers to customers. You will get ROI, you will get less tickets, you will get less problems.
If the customer doesn't know that they have even like a slight responsibility, the only thing that can happen to those websites is that they are going to get hacked. Right now is a question of who are the hosting companies that are moving fast and most likely getting an advantage on the market when those compliances and regulations are going to kick in.
Is it possible to use AI to find these vulnerabilities automatically? Yes. And how efficient is it compared to people?
So PatchStack and Google, in collaboration, we built a system that is finding WordPress vulnerabilities automatically. The big problem with AI finding vulnerabilities is the same problem that it has with coding, which is that it just makes a lot of mistakes. We have a separate AI team that is working on this. We call it AI Code Reviewer. While we use it as a security company and while we make it available for the plugin developers, hackers are also using it to find vulnerabilities to attack websites faster. So everything in security is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, but from what you're saying, it seems like the pace of this whole security thing is just accelerating because of AI. My guest is Oliver Sild, the founder and CEO of PatchStack, a security company working closely with hosting providers to protect open source applications, especially WordPress, at the application layer where most threats actually happen. With new EU laws on vulnerability reporting coming soon, PatchStack is solving a problem that most of the industry still ignores. Oliver is an ethical hacker and well-known voice in Estonia's tech scene and was recently named Young Entrepreneur of the Year. In the episode, we talk about how his hacker roots shaped the product, how PatchStack works with hosting companies, their recent study showing most providers are not truly secure for WordPress, and what's coming as new regulations roll in. Before we continue, special thanks to our diamond sponsor Blackwall, infrastructure security built for web hosters, engineered for engineers. We also appreciate the support of our gold sponsors, NameHero and PanAlpha. These companies make it possible for us to keep building web hosting today. If you'd like to get involved, feel free to reach out. Oliver, thank you for joining. Before we will start talking about the security and the problems of hosters, let's start with your history. Because as far as I understand, you were in the security for many years before you founded PatchStack and before PatchStack became the leading cybersecurity company for WordPress. So yeah, tell me, how did it happen? How did you get to this point?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here and share a little bit of what we do. But yeah, my background to cybersecurity started very early, like when I was actually like 14 or 15 year old. And yeah, when I was studying computer networking, and then from my studies, I kind of transitioned into military. So I was lucky enough to be able to learn quite a lot from, going to NATO exercises, a lot of military exercises in Estonia, being mostly on the offensive side. So I was specifically focusing on breaking stuff, trying to
hacking.
Well, quite literally hacking. So I've always been on this offensive side. And at the same time, I actually started my own company next to studies already, my first company, which focus was already on like doing domain space kind of auditing. So I looked into like local domain spaces, and then I used like all kinds of different ways of figuring out companies that have already been hacked and whose websites are compromised and so forth. So I basically built like a company to alert those, companies about those incidents, help them to basically do incident response. I did a lot of malware analysis. I did a lot of kind of cleanups, all these kind of things. And then on top of that, the company also worked on building applications from a more kind of like a secure angle. So, maintenance, security maintenance, things like that included already in the offering. Nowadays, I guess we call it care plans and maintenance plans, but then at least on our market, everyone was just building a website, giving it over to a customer, and then disappearing, right? So we tried to do it in a bit different way. And that kind of led us into building this internal tool that today is PatchStack, basically, because we needed to keep track of all the software components that we were using, look into how this software is built, whether it's secure, because all of these attacks mostly happen through vulnerabilities in the plugins and so forth. So it kind of like naturally evolved in in this direction.
And so these websites were built on WordPress mostly?
So in the beginning, we mostly used Joomla. So I was actually from the Joomla side of the things. And then at one point, like really, really suddenly, it was very quickly changed to the market demand going completely over to WordPress. We did sites on Joomla, and then suddenly everyone was only asking about WordPress. So it kind of like naturally went in this direction. I did also security for Magento, been kind of like doing incident response on Drupal, basically all the CMSs you could come up with, even like custom built applications and stuff like that. So quite a lot of different websites that I've been dealing with.
Wow, but that's a great starting point to, be an attacker with NATO and learn all this stuff from the inside. That's actually incredible. I didn't know that. So you can
Yeah.
put that on the front that started at NATO and now having PatchStack sounds awesome. Okay, so and before we also talk about the security stuff, I guess we should also talk about PatchStack itself for those who are maybe not familiar exactly what you are doing. So can you provide a bit more details on what PatchStack is doing? How does it work, and how is it really effective?
Yeah, so PatchStack is most and foremost the threat intelligence company. So what we very heavily focus on is figuring out what kind of security vulnerabilities are within content management systems like WordPress, WordPress core, all of the plugins, themes, everything, and understand and identify those vulnerabilities before hackers do. So that is literally the core focus of ours. And then the next kind of like thing is like what we do with this data, right? Like what we do with this information once we become aware that there is a security issue in any of those plugins. And that's where we built a system to automatically mitigate those vulnerabilities on any website that is running those plugins. To date, we like over roughly like 1,000 plugins, very well-known ones like Elementor, for example. If you find a security vulnerability in Elementor Page Builder and you report that to the Elementor team, they actually tell you to report that security issue to PatchStack. So we act as their security point of contact. So we control the disclosure. We make sure how this vulnerability. So we make sure the vulnerability gets properly patched. We validate the patches. We then control the when the vulnerability information is made public with all these other security companies and so forth. And at the same moment, when we make vulnerabilities public, we always publish them together with mitigation rules. So those mitigation rules are part of our product called Rapid Mitigate. And what Rapid Mitigate does is that it basically sits inside of our website. It keeps consistent kind of like overview of what the website is made of. If our security vulnerability that affects any of the components that the website is made of, it essentially can pull this vulnerability specific security rule inside of the website and then eliminates the vulnerability internally. And then when a site is getting, for example, fixed, updated to a fixed version, then this rule is being removed. The benefit of doing it like that, what we call dynamic deployment of security rules or virtual patching, is that we can have by far the largest collection of security rules on the market. Right now, we have over 12,000 individual mitigation rules for security vulnerabilities, and we can deploy them on demand on customers' websites only when they are vulnerable and only when an attacker is actually trying to exploit a security vulnerability in that specific part of the code. So because of that, it's super like very, very high efficiency. The performance impact for websites is almost non-existent because we don't need to have like 12,000 security rules in front of every website. The websites only have those that they actually need, and the rules can be very, very precise. So to a point where bypassing those rules is, if not impossible, then very, very hard. Because when, from a technical point of view, for example, how generic firewalls like Cloudflare and all those work is that they deploy all the rules in front of every single website and every single request. But that means that the rules need to be very generic in their nature, and they are always optimized for the lowest amount of false positives. So, when you optimize it for low amount of false positives, then you're also losing the effectiveness of them. In our case, we don't need to optimize them at all in that regard. And for example, if there's a SQL injection vulnerability, which allows you to read something from the database or send malicious requests into the database. What usually like generic firewalls do is that they create like patterns where they try to figure out like, oh, did someone try to put SQL commands into request or something like that.
Yeah.
In our case, we don't even need to look at that. We know what the vulnerability is inside of the code. So we know like, okay, this function would actually only need to as an input numbers, and that's what our rule is going to be. So you can try to put whatever SQL commands there, you can try whatever evasion techniques, commands, whatever. Our rule is saying this function can only pass numbers. That's it. So it's a
Okay.
completely different approach to mitigating those vulnerabilities. It's almost like a sanitization layer inside of the application to kind of like fix those vulnerabilities without actually changing any code on the site itself. So very low touch, very low kind of very fast in that regard, can be scaled across the entire infrastructure very easily because it doesn't require you to install anything on the servers. It's very application specific and in fact very efficient. So that's the core part of what the PatchStack as a product is providing to agencies and hosting companies.
All right. So if I understand correctly, so when you're working on these vulnerabilities, do you look actively for them, or is it based on community? I know that you have a community, right? But
Yeah.
so you have your team that handles that to some extent, and then you have community, and all that combined gets you to the point that you can have all these data, and then from that data your solution works. So how does it all connect?
So what we do is one thing. So there's multiple sources. Well, we also have internal security team, which is approximately half of our company, and we are almost 40 people. So quite a lot of security people in the company in general. We have even scattered people across all time zones. We have people in Europe, in the States. We have people in Asia. So we make sure that we have like security researchers on every time zone to make sure that whatever third-party sources there are where vulnerabilities might get published, they are always adding those information to our data set, in real time, and then that the security rules are being developed and shipped to our customers also in real time. So this is like ongoing work. So that is one part of it. Then one significant channel where we get probably quite significant competitive advantage on the market is the fact that PatchStack is the security point of contact for so many plugins. Like if you think about any hosting company and how many websites that they host are based on Elementor, for example, then PatchStack being direct security partner with Elementor itself gives us a competitive advantage to be able to know about vulnerabilities first, regardless who finds the vulnerability. In many cases, it could be our competitor who finds a vulnerability in Elementor, and then they report it to Elementor, but Elementor is basically making PatchStack to process it. So we always have this visibility into those vulnerabilities very, very early before anyone in the public knows about them. And that makes it possible for us to, deliver those security rules also before anyone else on the market can do it. And then there is this community aspect that you also mentioned, which is the PatchStack Bug Bounty program, where we have roughly 2,000 ethical hackers across the world. We tell them to find vulnerabilities in plugins, and if they report valid ones to us, we pay them money. We're paying good hackers to find vulnerabilities before the bad hackers can find them and exploit them, right? So that's like the three angles. Like we have the internal security team that is, monitoring all potential channels where information could come in. Then we have the direct partnerships with nearly 1,000 plugin developers directly, and then we have this community aspect where ethical hackers around the world are looking proactively for vulnerabilities in plugins and themes and WordPress and so on, and then they report that into our system, and then again we validate those vulnerabilities, we process them, we assign the CVEs, we create the security rules, and our customers and the hosting partners are those who benefit from it, as they can protect the customers before the hackers even know that those vulnerabilities exist.
Okay. So it sounds like a very well-structured system to be ahead and incentivize good guys to be more effective than the bad guys, right?
I mean, ultimately, cybersecurity is about knowledge, right? You cannot protect yourself or your customers against what you don't know about. So that's why in the beginning, I immediately said as well, like most and foremost, we're a threat intelligence company. And then what we do with that threat intelligence, that is what is bringing value to the customers. But without that threat intelligence, we couldn't do any of it.
You wouldn't be effective, yeah. Okay, so your study on security, by the end of August, so less than a month as of recording of this episode, you've made a study, the first version of the study. I'm expecting more. You said that you're
Yeah.
having more additions and I guess doing it more extensive. You tested a bunch of hosting providers, not providing names, but you've tested these providers. I imagine they were big guys. And 88% of all the exploits that you were trying were, you bypassed all the defenses like WAF, which in other words means that they are not protected, and you were also not being very sophisticated there. The exploits were very common and announced like 2 years ago, and it's a
Yeah.
public knowledge. You don't need to have a patch stack to know about this
Yeah.
vulnerability, right?
We could have made it quite a lot harder by choosing some of the very latest ones, which
Yeah.
obviously we are on top of the game, but like not everyone would be, because they are not in the process as we are in the very early phase of those vulnerability findings. But indeed, so what we did was, funny enough, like a year ago or two ago, what we did was we created a honeypot system for internal demo purposes. So, for example, every time we talked to any hosting company that reached out to us, they wanted PatchStack to protect their customers from those vulnerabilities and whatnot, then we created like a demo environment or like a PatchStack account where we signed up dummy WordPress websites. We signed up to different hosting companies, like 10 plus different hosters, like known names in the industry. And then we signed up a fake domain name, and then just took like whatever hosting plan that they had, and then just made like a fake WordPress website. And then we intentionally loaded vulnerabilities on them. Like every time new vulnerabilities came out, we just loaded vulnerabilities on them, and then also ran PatchStack on it as well. Our goal actually originally was that we just wanted to see like how PatchStack works in different environments, for the testing purposes and and so forth. But what we started to notice is that on every single hosting company, we saw that PatchStack was preventing all of those vulnerabilities. And what it means, if you know how PatchStack works, what it means is that PatchStack is hooked into the WordPress application itself, because that's the only place where you have visibility into what the application is made of. But also that's the only place where you have direct visibility into sessions, because to avoid false positives and things like that, you sometimes need to be able to not run a security rule for administrators, for example, and things like that. So doing it in the application is the only place where you have all this visibility. But when you do it there, that means that you're basically like the last level of defense, right? So the first line of defense is the network, so that the attacker never even reaches the server. Then the second one is the server. Like, okay, it came through the network, it landed on the server. Now the server is processing the request before they even send it to the WordPress application. But the fact that all these attacks actually reached PatchStack itself means that every single layer before PatchStack has failed at preventing this vulnerability from being exploited. And whenever we've talked about those vulnerabilities, and we've done quite a lot of studies over the years, like we do the annual State of WordPress Security white paper that I presented at CloudFest Europe in different conferences. There's been arguments that, hey, but hosting companies are already covering all those vulnerabilities with the network level firewalls. And for me, it didn't really make a lot of sense, because even if you look into our most recent State of WordPress Security white paper, which we did actually in partnership with a security company called Sucuri, which is owned by GoDaddy, what they shared is that they see around 500,000 new WordPress websites being infected last year alone. So now, if we take those two facts, like 500,000 WordPress websites infected last year alone, and the second fact is that all hosting companies already have security and they have firewalls and whatnot in place that prevent those vulnerabilities.
Something's just not working. Yeah.
Something is like off, right? So we're like, okay, let's do a very like specific case where we took security vulnerabilities which have been gone through media, like everyone should know about those vulnerabilities if they are in the WordPress ecosystem, because they have been publicly talked about. They are vulnerabilities that have been mass exploited. There are security companies that have shared what the hackers are doing with those vulnerabilities, and all. Like, we know these are mass exploited vulnerabilities in the ecosystem. So we created essentially a WordPress installation that had those specific vulnerabilities present. And then we created automation script to just like mimic the same attacks that attackers were doing against those vulnerabilities. And then we were taking a bunch of different hosting companies, and we specifically looked at hosting companies based on different kind of security setups, like what kind of security products they were using, or what their, if you go to hosting website, you see, we offer secure WordPress hosting, and we specifically chose hosting companies that made security promises, and we tried to choose like different types of hosters based on like whether they had different kind of security setups, like they were advertising different, like someone was offering Cloudflare, someone was offering some other security products on server level, network level. We tried to have as diverse set of hosters, as diverse setup or security setups as possible, and then we just like signed up, took whatever the customers are getting, installed the WordPress site with all those vulnerabilities in them, and then we just mimic the same attacks that attackers are already known to be doing. And that's the results that we were seeing, is that we didn't even need to try to bypass those vulnerabilities. They just went straight through. And that's the problem, is that DNS-based firewalls or like network level firewalls, they don't have visibility into what the application is made of. There's no WordPress specific threat intelligence behind them. They are all trying to offer like a generic security across the entire, whatever the website is, WordPress, Drupals, custom coded. These firewalls needs to work for every single one of those applications. But the problem is that if you look into like the vulnerabilities that are being exploited in the WordPress ecosystem, these are super specific to WordPress, like authentication bypass, privilege escalation, where you can like sign up to an administrator account directly, or where the if you look at the request itself, someone who does not understand WordPress wouldn't even think that it is a malicious request. How would Cloudflare would even be able to prevent something like that if they first don't know about it, and second, if it doesn't even look like a malicious request, right? So that is the challenge that we are having right now, is that hosting companies have really covered like the network level. And that's what I always say, you need to cover all layers of security, because you don't want to have the trash traffic like AI bots and whatnot to even hit the servers. So you need to have a really good layer on top of the network. And then you need something on the server layer. For example, you need to have malware scanners and things like that that sits in the server itself. It should not run as a plugin or anything like that. You need to have a very good server level security system in place that also protects like the LAMP stack. So you need to cover that layer of security. But when we look into like how WordPress websites are getting hacked, in reality, it's always, or like
It's just
90,
WordPress,
it's
just
application
WordPress
level issues. It's basically, we can put it into 50-50. It's vulnerabilities in plugins and themes and WordPress core that are not updated to a fixed version. And the second half of it is user errors, like bad passwords, using null plugins, having session tokens hijacked, stuff like that. So the one part that we can already quite well prevent is the plugin side. But this is, already we could reduce the amount of incidents by 50% if we would focus security on where the attackers are actually focusing their attention to. So I think that's where hosting companies definitely have quite a lot of work still to do to the application side of the security puzzle.
All right, so let's talk about that. How can a hosting company do that? And it sounds like a good idea. Okay, let's just use PatchStack, or I don't know if you have a comparable competitor, right? But again, we are talking about the industry that's unfortunately a race to the bottom type of industry, right? So whenever you have a good solution, but you need to increase the price or ask customer to pay for it, there's always this problem that, okay, let's say that we are asking customer, okay, pay $1 per site, $1 extra for hosting account per month. 20% people that are aware that maybe, okay, I should do that, will do it, but all the rest will not. And if that 80% of the guys that didn't buy it get hacked, they still blame you, right? Because you, as a hoster, need to put a label secure hosting on your website. You need to do that. But at the same time, if you increase your price compared to the competition, you're losing customers, right? So how to do it effectively? Yeah?
If you say you're a secure hosting, because you have to say it. But if you're actually not, then you're causing more problems to yourself than you're actually solving, because then when the customers do get hacked, then you are ultimately the one that is responsible for it. When a customer comes to a hoster and then they install a WordPress website and they have the free will to install any plugins there or log in and change content,
Yeah,
it is impossible for the hosting company to take responsibility over the security of the website itself.
that's
As
right. Yeah.
long as we play a game where you come to host, if we tell the customer like, oh yeah, we're keeping your website safe, then it's almost creating an illusion that this is almost happening, where a hosting company is covering the security of the website itself, even though we know that it's not possible. I think what the state of, let's talk just specifically about WordPress, for example, because that's literally 80% of what all the hosting companies are hosting nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the only ecosystem that I know where malware cleanups is normalized, almost like a security feature. I've seen hosters that are also like, oh, with our hosting, you get free malware cleanups. Imagine if AWS or Google Cloud would offer it for their enterprise customers or anyone in that sense, where, oh, by the way, if you get hacked, we're just gonna delete all the malware on your site, so you're good. But like no one is making root cause analysis of like, hey, why did it even happen, and what did the
Yeah,
hacker do with all this access? Malware is just a consequence, right? They had access to, most likely, like if it's an e-commerce shop, they had access to personal
yeah,
data.
all the data.
It was PII leak. Like last week in Estonia, we had a case where there was a pharmacy which was hacked the same way, and the loyalty card information, which included the purchase history, names, addresses, stuff like that, that all came out through this e-commerce shop. And
Yeah,
then they got fined 3 million euros just last week. So this kind of stuff is what e-commerce stores needs to think about as well, because it's not only about just having someone injected malware on our website, I'll just kind of quickly find someone from Fiverr to clean it up for me. It's
yeah,
it's an issue, right? But yeah, ultimately we need to get out of this situation where we make security like a problem that the hosting company needs to solve for the customer by themselves, because it has to be a shared responsibility. It's not only
Mhm.
about every hosting company should include security, and that's what the customers expect. And I think that is one of the reasons why right now on hosting, but also on the agency market as well, or in general in WordPress, for example, the most amount of money made by security companies comes from malware cleanups and this kind of scans. But we really need to change that, because we've had those companies that do malware cleanups and scanning and stuff like that for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed in the sense of how many websites are getting hacked. Actually, more websites are getting hacked nowadays. So
But it's reaction, right? It's
it's
not being
reaction.
proactive.
It's not about
So
being proactive at all.
it's not solving the problem.
And it makes sense because the customers have never known about the security problem until they got hacked.
Yeah.
So for a host to offer security to a customer and they think like, yeah, but I'm just having a pizza shop or I have this cafeteria,
Yeah.
like why
Yeah.
would anyone hack my website? I would never be a target. They don't have anything on me, right? Which we know in the industry it's not the case. Hackers don't give a damn who you are. They are attacking the website to get the resources from the website. They later, when they already have the access, then they might look into, oh, maybe this one is more valuable than this one, right? But everyone is getting hacked. Once you're online, you're gonna see, we did this test. We signed up a new domain name and then set up a website. The attacks are coming in a matter of hours to a new website, to a new domain. What hackers are actually doing is that they are also looking at the SSL registries, like when a new SSL is, or like certificates are being applied to domains. And there is, in fact, like a huge attack going on right now where websites are being hacked even before they were set up. So the hackers are looking when an SSL certificate is being applied to a new domain, and then they immediately go and try to hack this website because they think that when they can when they can launch attack at the same moment when an SSL certificate was applied, then there is a high chance of there's a high chance the website still, like if you go to that website, you see the WordPress installation panel, right, where you're like where you still like set up your administrator account and things like that, which is like the setup wizard for WordPress install. And that's the
Crazy.
moment already when the websites are getting hacked. But ultimately, something that I think we've changed with PatchStack is that we were able to make customers understand security before they were hacked. And this is why a lot of the hosting companies love what we do, is that we bring that threat intelligence in front of the end users before they've been basically hacked, and we can predict that if they are not sorting out those vulnerabilities on their applications, they will get most likely hacked in the future. And that changes this game a lot, because we can, if you show your end customer that, hey, we found a security vulnerability in the website that you built, in those plugins that you installed, that immediately gets the customer understanding of shared responsibility, because they understand that, hey, I made this website, I didn't update those plugins, the website is my responsibility. And now when you consistently notify the customers about, like, there's security vulnerability found in your plugin version, that please update, or there's another option to invest in security and get those vulnerabilities auto mitigated,
Yeah.
which is what we offer to hosts, then security is not the cost anymore. What we see with our partners with hosters is that we can convert like 5% of the user base in a first month. And this is a huge conversion rate, where it's actually not the cost to a hosting company at all, but it only comes with, first of all, generates a new revenue stream, because you can now sell security to the customers before they were having an incident. You actually reduce the number of incidents, which also reduces the amount of support load you get. But what we also noticed is increased number of retention on those customers who actually invested into security, because they see the value that they are getting also from the security side that the host is providing them, regardless whether they paid for an extra add-on or not. But they are seeing that there's like a security of their website is being taken care of. So what we see, at least from our angle, is that there is like this shift is happening. Bigger hosting company, like we just signed a deal with probably one of the largest hosting companies that is now going to offer PatchStack to every single customer of theirs, in that exact same model, where they notify the customers when new vulnerabilities are being found, and then they offer
So
PatchStack
they
protection as
upsell?
an add-on. Yes, as an add-on.
But the
Because then
scanning is, so you offer scanning option for free for hosters?
no, so hosting company pays for the threat intelligence service that we offer to them. So that
Okay.
means that all the vulnerability reports that come through all the plugin partners that we have, through this bug bounty program, through this internal security team, all these vulnerabilities that are being fed into our system, we let the hosting company know about those vulnerabilities before we even make it
Okay.
publicly visible in our public vulnerability databases. So we give like a up to 48-hour heads up about vulnerabilities to our hosting partners, and then they can use that to notify their customer base. So the customers would know about vulnerabilities before hopefully hackers
Okay.
have figured
Yeah.
it out. And then every notification comes with an offer, like, hey, if you're going to get those notifications over and over again, because there's so many new vulnerabilities being found all the time. But ultimately the customer can then choose, like, whether they want to wake up 2 a.m. in the morning to, I need to update quickly because there's new vulnerability found, or they enroll to
Just pay.
like a $1 or $2 add-on, that next time a vulnerability is found, they get the notification that, hey, we just mitigated a new vulnerability on your website, 1,000 attacks have been blocked. Completely different discussion with the customer.
Okay, so you were telling that being proactive in terms of like messaging can convert these customers to paid customers. You will
Yeah.
get ROI, you will get less tickets, you will get less problems at the same time, because it's
Yeah.
always some burden on the support team. Even though if you are not, it's obvious that the responsibilities on the customer, you always have to deal with that, right? And
Well,
check what's going on and then
if the
say,
customer doesn't know that they have this responsibility, they are never going to do anything. Then
yeah.
the only thing that, like, if the customer doesn't know that they have even like a slight responsibility, the only thing that can happen to those websites is that they are going to get hacked. That is the
Okay.
reality, because ultimately they need to be they need to be able to invest into security, or the hosting company needs to turn that into at their own cost. But what we see is that there is like no need to turn it into a host cost, because this can actually be a very significant revenue channel for hosting companies to actually make more money. So in fact, most of the hosting companies that we work with today, they have decided to turn it into an add-on, because a single host can make to 1 million ARR from this. So I think it really comes down to like how hosters are seeing security on their side. But we see some of hosting companies also have internal security teams, and some of those security people internally are tasked to keep an eye on the latest vulnerabilities. We can give you TI, and you can get like a team of 15 security researchers that we have in-house working around the clock for a cheaper price than what you can hire a fraction of a security researcher internally. So this is all the kind of ROI and side of the things that the hosting companies are actually getting when they partner with PatchStack. And we have, for any hosters maybe who are listening to it, if they go to patchstack.com, we have case studies there. We have them with different hosters like PageLead from GoDaddy.
Examples how to successfully implement it.
A lot of different case studies.
What about education to the customers? Do you think it's something that might work, that hosters should do, or is it
I think
just
it's the most important thing? And that's what, and this is literally why we are doing this threat intelligence side first. And we offer hosting companies like the threat intelligence for them to be able to notify every single customer, regardless whether they're on a free plan, paid plan, premium plan, whatever. Every single customer should be notified when there is a security vulnerability on their website. And this is the starting point of all of that education. Like, honestly, this will become mandatory. If you're aware of the Cyber Resilience Act in the EU that was passed and that is going to, new first obligations are going to kick in next year, vulnerability management and reporting vulnerabilities about digital products. And website is a digital product. So whoever built a website for a customer, a digital product to a customer, there is going to be mandatory requirement to notify them about the security vulnerabilities present on that product. So right now is a question of who are the hosting companies that are moving fast and most likely getting an advantage on the market when those compliances and regulations are going to kick in, compared to those who are lagging behind and most likely losing some of the customers to those who are moving fast as well. So because it's happening anyways.
So you are saying you have the biggest vulnerability database, and EU
By far.
government have requested everyone to report vulnerabilities to their customers. Do you have
Yes.
any lobby in the government?
No, but
Just...
we don't have. But it's a fair question, because PatchStack has been funded by the European government by 2.7 million euros to actually build out part of our. So European government actually gave PatchStack 2.7 million euros as a grant, so we would build the MVDP platform for plugin developers. So what I mentioned, around 1,000 plugin developers, have set PatchStack as their security point of contact. So that's where a lot of the vulnerability data reaches to PatchStack first. This was built together with European Union to make plugin developers compliant with this new Cyber Resilience Act, which makes them, so the MVDP that we are offering is going to be, like, VDPs are going to be mandatory by European law to everyone who makes their products, digital products, available in the European market. So even if you're a US-based hosting company or US-based agency or plugin developer, even if you're not selling to Europe, but if it's possible to buy in Europe, then you already need to be compliant. And so, yes, we work very close together with the European Union. We pass vulnerability notifications into the European vulnerability database. And we have pretty big control over vulnerability data in the WordPress ecosystem. And of course, the biggest vulnerability database in our space as well. I believe if you look into the CVE assignments, we're the official CNA, so we have been given rights by the Homeland Security, like MITRE and Homeland Security are sponsoring this system where you assign those vulnerability identification codes. So we are one of the 3 organizations in the entire ecosystem in the WordPress space who even is authorized to deal with the vulnerabilities in this way. So I believe at this point around 60% or something, or 60 to 70% of all known vulnerabilities in the WordPress ecosystem originate through our research.
All right, that was supposed to be a silly joke, but it wasn't.
It isn't really, and that's why I'm saying threat intelligence is what we are focusing very heavily on.
That's what I wanted to talk about now, really, about the trends in the security that you see. And of course, one is legislation and like pressure to the companies that, well, you need to take care of your customers on what you are doing in the web to make it more secure, to get less of these incidents happening. Um, do you see any other things or trends that might emerge in the future? I guess one of them obviously is AI, maybe some social engineering attacks and things like that. But do you see anything that's emerging that's something new that will get more popular?
I think right now AI is twofold. Look, let's start from AI because that's
Yeah,
what is I think
we have
has
to talk about
most.
AI, right?
Yeah, it has more angles than anything else. So one thing that we've done in our previous research as well is we've tracked. So because we know about vulnerabilities even before they are public, and we ship security rules out in the world the same moment when we make them public, what we have like a unique position is to track when vulnerability is made public and when the first attacks are coming in. So
Hmm.
we've tracked like how fast do attackers actually weaponize vulnerabilities, right? And this time is between like 30 minutes, sometimes less, to an hour. Now,
Okay.
show me one user who is going to, like, when a new plugin update is coming out, they are like, oh, I'm going to like quickly update it in 1 hour. They're already late by then, right? So the website is already hacked. What we are seeing with AI, one very specific thing is that this timeline is being shortened even more. And the reasoning
Okay.
behind it is in the past, so hackers intentionally have tried to weaponize vulnerabilities as fast as possible because the quicker you do it, the less users have had time to update, the
Yeah,
more
you
websites
have
you
more
can take
chance.
over. But that's what has separated elite hackers from noob hackers, let's say, is the speed of how fast they figure out what the vulnerability is, where it is in the code, and how fast can they develop the exploit scripts to run the mass attacks, right? And
Hmm.
now we have AI. You have a changelog file which says that cross-site scripting vulnerability was fixed. All you need to do is take this changelog, take like even like from the WordPress track, you take like the diff of two versions, give it to AI and say like, somewhere here was cross-site scripting fixed. Can you tell me where it is? And then the AI is immediately just like, yeah, here it is. And then you send a second prompt to it. It's like, great, can you build me a testing framework so I could test this vulnerability
Yeah, yeah,
against our own systems?
yeah. You cannot
Whether,
say that you're a hacker, right?
yeah, you cannot,
If
but
my friend was a hacker, what code
yeah,
would he
yeah.
use to hack my site?
Asking
Yeah.
for a friend. um, and what now happens is that because all these open source software, all these track requests, like even we have internal system, we have like alerts going off every time when we see certain like plugins release an update with certain patterns, or like we identify new vulnerabilities sometimes when a new vulnerability or like new update is being released to a plugin, and then we analyze those change logs, and then we see that there was a mistake made, and then we actually find new vulnerabilities in such a way. So hackers are doing the same thing, and they are also exploiting them with the help of AI now. So we don't really have time anymore to update. We need to have something that can protect us before the developers have time, or like wake up in the morning to see that, oh, there's new update available. We need automated systems that are capable of mitigating vulnerabilities before. So that is also like one of our strategy why we are doing it in such a way where we don't do hard code changes on the site. We don't change anything on the disk, right? We just
Mhm.
mitigate it on the application layer. So the speed to weaponization is definitely one of the things that is being changed with AI. And the second part is the amount of new vulnerabilities being introduced by vibe coded plugins. Like, I don't know if you saw, but there was a report released by WordPress.org that there's 70 something percent increase in plugin
Plugin
submissions.
submissions, yeah.
Yeah, so there's like huge amount of new plugins being pushed into the ecosystem, and big part of them is just completely vibe coded. And now, what will happen if a vulnerability is being found on a vibe coded plugin? We've already had these situations ourselves where someone from our ethical hackers community is finding a vulnerability in a plugin that is vibe coded. We then process this vulnerability, report the developer, and the developer has no idea how to fix that. Like they literally they don't understand how what this vulnerability is. They don't understand how to fix it, and then this
Yeah.
vulnerability is left unpatched, or they need to hire someone who knows how to patch it, because every time they try to patch it with AI, something else is breaking. So that is a
Interesting.
huge challenge as well, because the quality of the plugins code has dropped, actually, which means more vulnerabilities are being introduced. We are trying to also use internally AI for the other side of it,
That's what I
which
wanted
is,
to ask. Yeah.
you know,
Is it possible to use AI to find these vulnerabilities
yes.
automatically? And how efficient is it compared to people?
So I think in a week or two, you will find a case study that we are launching together with Google. So PatchStack and Google, in collaboration, we built a system that is finding WordPress vulnerabilities automatically. It does find real vulnerabilities. The big problem with AI finding vulnerabilities is the same problem that it has with coding, which is that it just makes a lot of mistakes. There's a lot
Guesses,
of,
it guesses. It's not like
yeah, but it's
it's
also very
intelligent.
confident. It's very confident in making mistakes. So the problem is it is saying hey, there's this security vulnerability, but then you look into it and, well, actually it's not. So a big part of our work internally, we have a separate AI team that is working on this. We call it AI code reviewer. We've also made it available to our plugin partners so they can use that to automatically scan their plugins to find new
Mm-hmm.
vulnerabilities and fix them. But what we do see is that a huge amount of our focus goes into verifiers, like figuring out how to reduce noise, basically, like how to make it flag vulnerabilities while reducing the amount of noise it creates together with finding them. But it does find quite severe vulnerabilities automatically. And we need to
Mm-hmm.
take into account that, again, while we use it as a security company, and while we make it available for the plugin developers to find vulnerabilities in their plugins and fix them faster, hackers are also using it to find vulnerabilities to attack websites faster. So everything in security is a double-edged sword, right? So that is something that we
Yeah.
need to take into account with AI.
Yeah, but from what you're saying, it seems like the pace of this whole security thing is just accelerating because of AI. Do you
For
think
sure.
it's a future also for PatchStack? Because you were talking about vibe coders, right?
Yeah.
And they are using certain tools. I don't know, Lovable maybe, or
Yeah.
uh, I'm not exactly sure what could be used for a plugin for WordPress, but are you going to partner with those tools as well to find some synergies there to make web secure in the result, if we are talking about so many plugins being developed like that?
So we've been thinking about that, but we don't necessarily need to focus on Lovable or V0 or any of those specific vibe coding tools. What we need to focus on is what those vibe coding tools are using to build the websites. And in most of the cases, they are using React. They build, what they basically do is they build React application or Next.js, application. So what we actually, and this is something that we're already working on internally with PatchStack, is to expand our coverage from content management systems to frameworks such as Laravel, React, Node.js,
Mm-hmm,
things like
mm-hmm.
that. And once we do that, we anyways need to cover a custom code. And whether this custom code is generated by AI or an actual programmer, well, in that case, it doesn't even matter anymore, right? But yeah, with AI, the problem we have right now specifically is the quality of what is being shipped. And also the big problem is that the people who are shipping it, they have no idea how to fix it. So that is my question. And now we come, I guess, to the second part, which is compliance, because the new and upcoming Cyber Resilience Act in the European Union was passed as a law already in October last year. Now
Mm-hmm.
companies have time until June 2026, which is already in 8 months, 9
Yeah.
months, where the first obligations are kicking in. And that's the point where if you fail on those obligations, you start to get fined, right? So right now is this grace period for the companies to set things up. And one of the things that Cyber Resilience Act is saying is all digital products offered, sold, made available in European Union, they need to basically have security covered by default. So you need to have, for any digital product, you need to have a security point of contact. You need to have vulnerability management in place. You need to notify your customer who is using your digital product about the vulnerabilities in your software. So if you're, for example, using a plugin and there's a new vulnerability found in this plugin, if you're not notifying your customer that your plugin had a vulnerability, you can get fined. You need to have SBOMs, which is like software bill of materials, which means that it's like almost like an ingredient list, like what you have on a cake. If you go to a shop, it says
Yeah.
like 50% sugar basically and stuff like that, right? So software bill of materials is the same thing for software, where you need to basically say like this. For example, an agency is selling a website to a customer, which is a digital product. They need to be able to say this website is made of this plugin, this plugin, this plugin, but
Yeah.
then for them to be able to have a compliant product in that sense, all the plugins used in that website also need to be compliant and have to have SBOM saying our plugin is built with this, and that. So my question is, how will AI pipe coded products developers are going to become compliant
Yeah.
if they have no idea what's actually happening under the hood? So
That's
this is
really
going to be a very
interesting.
significant challenge because the law is already passed. Like it's coming. We can't do anything about it. We do have some sense of understanding of how it will change the WordPress ecosystem, and we are already working in this direction. We've made already approximately 1,000 plugin developers compliant with Cyber Resilience Act. So now agencies who need to start
Now
offering
you need a
compliant
little,
website.
like maybe 50,000
Yeah,
more to be
yeah.
subscribed. Yeah, but
Yeah, but no, but I think the market is going to push it on its own. Like when agencies need to build a website to a customer and the customer wants to have their own website compliant and things like that, then they ask the agency, hey, you have to tell us whether the website that you built to us is compliant and
yeah,
are you cyber resilience compliant.
no, it's
For the
gonna be,
agency to
yeah,
answer yes, then the agency needs to answer the same question about from every single plugin they choose, right? So it all
no, it's
comes,
actually crazy. Yeah.
it all boils down, eventually. But now the question again, it's the same thing. Like hosting companies who right now start to notify their customers about vulnerabilities and making vulnerability management and mitigation part of, at least offer that to the end users, are going to have slight advantage on the market. And the same thing is happening to all the plugin developers who are taking the step to essentially already start looking into what these compliances are requiring them to do. I invite hosting companies to think about the same way, and agencies and plugin developers the same. Agencies should already ask the plugin developers, do you have a VDP in place for your plugin? Do you have a security point of contact? What's your security process when a new vulnerability is found? Plugin developers should think the same thing, is like, okay, when agencies might start asking it, do we already have everything set up? And for the hosters as well, like, can they already start doing something in this direction of letting the customers know of vulnerabilities and being better than the other hosts of offering proactive security rather than staying reactive and just cleaning up the mess as we've done for the past 20 years.
That's very interesting. That actually covers my last question about what hosting companies can do or what will be the trends for the hosting companies in the future in relation to security. The pressure from the government is definitely the good motivator
I
to
would I
look
would
into it.
even I would even imagine that there is a bigger pressure from agencies, because a lot of what is driving hosting companies, depending on the hosters, of course, like some of our very B2C, but there's also B2B hosters out there. Like if the cost, like security has become mainstream, right? So we see on mainstream media, everyone is talking about scams and cybersecurity and things like that. So uh, when hosting companies remain to be the place where it's your first step to have an online presence for your company or for whatever, like for your personal brand, for your blogging, hosting companies usually is the first company you reach out to when you're going to get an online presence, because then you're like
That's right.
signing up for a domain, you're signing up for hosting, you get an email, things like that.
I would even say it's not even online presence. In many cases, when you start a business, you start with the domain name because you don't even know how
Yeah,
your business can be named because there's so many domains taken, right? So you
well,
even sometimes
good
start
point.
your
Yeah.
business from hosting. Yeah.
Yeah. And now when, at the same time, those customers are seeing like all the ISPs are, like you get with your TV package, you get home security and your routers are having security included and you get security packages offered left and right.
Yeah.
It shows a direct trend of this is going to be something that the hosting companies will be asked for as well. And ISPs are not including it into everything. Like they are also offering that as a additional package, and everything that you get an additional package feels like a additional service rather than just something that is being a buzzword. That's why I do really think that hosters really need to kind of look into making sure that the customers even understand that the hosting actually offers them this additional security if they are interested in it, and then really doing it. Hosters don't need to cover all the expenses, especially for something that they don't have a control over. For me, I don't see a scenario where in 2 or 3 years there is one hosting company left that is not telling their customer when there's a security vulnerability in the website that they're hosting with them. It makes no sense, like especially those who are offering managed WordPress. Because what managed WordPress ultimately is about is management, and what management is about security, right? So I think
must work.
So I think it's a question of ultimately who are going to be moving fast and getting the most out of the market and getting the customers on their side now by being proactive about security. And then there are the losers who are most likely not taking this step, and they realized when CRA is going to hit, and when there's going to be sudden huge pressure on agencies, on plugin developers, on customers who have website to have vulnerability management in place. Right now is a good timing to see who are going to be the winners in the next 2 or 3 years.
I have just one idea that I need to mention is that today I was booking a flight. I think that hosting companies could learn something from the sites that are selling the flights, because there's always the choice. You can have insecure website. If something happens, you're gonna have to spend more money, or you will have actual loss, or you may be fined by the European Union, right? Or government, or wherever you are. But you can pay just $1, $2 per month and have much more secure website, right? Give them the clear choice. Instead of giving an option security, give them the choice. I don't want my site to be secure. I'm risking it or not. It's a different perspective.
And it's even better if you're not just giving them the choice, but you're also giving them a list of vulnerabilities that they already have on the website. And you give them here are all the list of vulnerabilities that are on your website. Would you like to continue having them on your website and getting your website most likely hacked in the future, or you can mitigate them automatically every time? So that's literally what we are doing with the hosting companies right now.
So communication, psychology to the customer, it's mixing things up and actually, motivating them that it's worth it.
Making them aware that they need to have security before everything has already turned into shit. That's basically the thing, because that's where we've been for the 20 past years. Most of the security that is been focused on is post-hack, right? Customer only understands security when they're already hacked. That's the common thing that we've been talking about. But this is only the case when we don't talk about security before they are hacked, and if we don't show them the problems beforehand. That's what is now possible. With PatchStack, you can predict that there is going to be a hack if you don't take care of those vulnerabilities. And it's a huge difference. It's a paradigm shift on the market, really. And everyone can take advantage of it. All the hosting companies can turn that into advantage for them and also for their customers in terms of security.
So ending with responsibility, maybe hosting company is not fully responsible on what's on the website, but they are responsible on informing customers and educating the market that it is important.
Maybe especially when you're saying you're managed WordPress, hosting.
Yes,
because
that's right.
What this managed is even about, if you're not managing vulnerabilities, for example.
That's right. Right. A lot of valuable insights and ideas how to solve the security problem as a hoster. I guess I wish you good luck in growing PatchStack. You're definitely on the right track and getting ahead of the bad guys, growing the influence in the industry, and as a result, making the web safer. Thank you for the interview, Oliver.
Thanks for inviting me.